Thank you very much, JP, for the invitation. I'm a little bit embarrassed because actually I'm talking about something I don't know anything about. And the only thing that I can say is that I've been leading a department of orthopedics for 22 years with the vision that the only task that I had was to advance our field. That was the only thing that was my mission. And I sort of was convinced that I could only do that if I had pupils who would contribute to do that, and that I would have to encourage them. Now, whatever I will be saying is absolutely, completely unscientific. It is, in Dr. Rockwood's terms, it would be bullshit. And I put that up because throughout the whole talk, I will essentially convey to you wisdom of other people, not of me, with respect to this topic. So, what drives scientific creativity and innovation? So it's a very personal perspective, and it focuses a little bit on where are we successful and maybe why are we not as successful as we would like to be. Now, what is the goal? The goal of our activity is to create beneficial knowledge, beneficial for patients, for society. Now, if you look at this study, you see that the knowledge is doubled in 73 days. Every 73 days, knowledge is doubled. Now, the interesting thing is that 50% of this knowledge is new knowledge, and 50% is disproving old knowledge and taking it back. And one of my best colleagues I've ever had taught me that the fact that we know something and go to the podium and say, that's the way it is, that's what we have found, we must know that the fact that we know something does not mean that it is true. We knew that all rotator cuff tears are caused by subacromial impingement. We knew that the Earth was a disk. We knew. It was just not true. So, as we have 73 days, everything that I learned is outdated. And everything that I could say, I'm not really sure whether it is true. So, I do not believe in transmission of knowledge at all. That's not bad, because one of the most brilliant persons I've ever seen was Reinhold Ganz, winner of the Meyer Award, and he said, brilliant people are not eager to learn. They are eager to understand. That's a very important concept that we should use in teaching. So I do not believe in the transmission of knowledge, but I do believe in the transmission of enthusiasm and curiosity. And be reminded, you can only light the fire in somebody else that is burning in you. If it is not burning in you, we will not create enthusiasm in other persons. So let us look at this fact again and highlight beneficial. It should be something reasonable. Now, although you can hardly believe it, I also had a future once, about 25 or so years ago. And at that time, let me now just look at one little thing for our shoulder surgeons on rotator cuff disease. So if we look at our 20-year results, re-tear rate at 20 years were 47%, but revisions were 10% at 20 years. Subjective shoulder value was 73%. At 10 years, done open, everything done wrong. Open, re-tears 1/3 at 10 years, revisions 19%, subjective shoulder value 80%. So that was 30 years ago. Since then, we have made enormous investments. We have made enormous efforts. And in that period of time, about 4,000 studies have been performed since 2000. I don't know anything about economics. I'm an orthopedic surgeon, so I can deal with very simple statements, like the one of Buffett, which says, price is what you pay, value is what you get. I mean, what have these 4,000 studies cost? Quite a lot of money. So what did we get for it? Okay, that's the results. You see the blue line, that's the number of publications and cost. The purple line is the results since 1990. No improvement whatsoever. Whatsoever. We have the same results that we had 25 years ago. If you look how many cuffs are intact, slight increase, not statistically significant. The amount of possible improvement, nothing. In 30 years, huh? So, I'm not really sure that we got the value that we wanted for the price we paid. And we always complain about politicians, but we are quite close to the politicians. If you remember that it took 20 years, trillions of dollars, and 4 US presidents to replace the Taliban with the Taliban. That's about where we are. Okay? So, why is that? I think we fail to get our power on the ground in certain domains. Like research in rotator cuff tear. I'm not talking about total shoulders. I don't know about, I'm not talking about immunology. I know that you can cure melanoma now, what we could not. I'm talking about here, take an example in orthopedics, research has been ineffective. And research has increased a lot of completely irrelevant knowledge, but not led to patient benefit. And irrelevant means it has not brought anything to our patients. And why is that so? It is neither centered on understanding nor on patient benefit. Well, you think that's my impression, but if you look at Nature, which is, that's not Newsweek, that's Nature, most what is currently presented is Me Too research, and disruptive, really important, disruptive research has plummeted. So we are in a Me Too situation, or if you want to translate that into the United States, it's a 510K methodology. That means since 1976, nothing really disruptive was easily accepted by FDA, so our research is very close to 1976. Well, what are the reasons, and why are we not more creative or even innovative? I really think it depends on our education. How do we function? Our teacher is the person who says how things are, how they are. And the interesting thing is we are top people, we are the best in the medical school and get the places that we want. Now, we get to Harvard, we get to HSS, we get to anywhere. So it is clear that our teachers are at least Einstein. So they are right, they are the absolute level of what we need to do. If they say something, what do? We follow them and we learn from them everything they tell us and everything we can learn. Well, that happens in training programs. And the problem is that we have already the term training programs. You train dogs. We should educate people, not train them. And I mean, training is against innovation. Training is against creativity. And if you look what happens with those that have been trained, then the saying is that one dog barks and 100 bark at the sound. That's what happens. We just repeat what our teachers have said without really knowing what we are saying, what we're talking about. And I am very often very astonished to see people in the United States or in Canada who come out of residency, have been out of residency 2 years, and then they tell me, I always tell my residents, I mean, what the hell is the difference? I mean, you don't know anything more than any good resident and have not to tell him anything. Ask him or her a question and find out how smart they are. Anyway, it is a miracle that curiosity, which is the most important prerequisite for any innovation, can survive the education that we provide. At the end of our training, we have learned everything that we have been indoctrinated with and believe that what we have learned is true. If we know the truth, we don't seek anything else because we know the truth. Why should we look for something more? And the worst thing are experts. Experts are deadly for our innovation. Why are you an expert? You're an expert because in the past you absorbed what had been said. And you are indoctrinated with what has happened. But what has happened is not what's going to be happening in the future. And the worst thing that I see are consensus conferences. These are 10 people who all don't know a lot and agree, and then this is right. I mean, that's the way we function. So look at people like Elon Musk. Experts, they only extrapolate the past. And they are the ones who peer review your papers with innovations. And Mark Twain has said, we only attribute common sense to people who agree with us. So the innovators will not be agreed upon. And these experts, to take Marie Ebner-Eschenbach, are the slaves of their current knowledge. And the happiest slaves are the bitterest enemies of freedom. This culture leads us to what Judah Folkman has said, to our behavior, which is very typical. Surgeons may be wrong, but they are never in doubt. And that's a real problem. And that is our culture. And know that culture is the key issue if we want to progress. I do not think that we have strategies to teach people, that we have strategies to, to progress, to go forward. I think it's the environment we create. It's the culture we create that allows people to disagree, that allows people to put down crazy ideas, because it is culture that will be determining. And the really important thing is that ignorance is the prelude to any real advantage. If you do not realize and agree that you don't know, if you do not realize that you don't know, you don't have to look for something else. If you know everything, you know everything. So why should you innovate something? Why should you create something? You know. Or in other words, you're an expert. So you do not have to create something. And it is terribly important that we know that we do not know, that we do not know most things, because that's the only way that we advance towards knowledge. Now, we are unable to live in doubt. Because we're surgeons, we have to close the wound and make up the best history you can and live as if this story were true. That's a Nobel laureate. What is the daily correlate to that? We operate a case, very difficult, we don't know exactly what to do. We doubt back and forth, we try as hard as we do. We close the case, we go to the ward, and then we tell the patient, well, it was very difficult, and I really tried to do the best, and I really think we did the best we could. Next day, you say, we did the best we could, okay? A week later, you know that you did the best you could, although it may have been a very crappy solution. But then you convince yourself that you did the best you could. So let me ask you a question. Who of you has never had bad results? Raise your hand. Who has never had a bad result? Can you raise your hand? Huh? Who has never had a bad result? Please raise your hand. Who has never had a really good result? Well, I've never had a bad result and I've never had a good result. Never. I've never had a bad result in my whole life. However, I have had a ton of patients who have had a bad result. Okay? Now, why is that important? You know, I mean, that is absolutely crucially important if you want to be an innovator. You know, you do not have bad results. You do not have bad results. Because if you have a bad result, you want to put it under the table. You do not want to deal with it, because the next step is you're a bad surgeon. Because you had a bad result. If you're a bad surgeon, the next step is you're a bad person. Okay? And you do not want to hear anything about that case. You do not want to see it anymore. The resident can do it in consultation and so forth. If you just have a result and the patient is not doing well, the situation is completely different. The situation is such that you, as the surgeon, he had a result which you do not want to see again. You have to study why this result was like this, and you will change. But you will not put it under the table. So be aware that if you listen to somebody who says, I have bad results, I mean, the risk is always for the patient. It's not for you. So thoroughly conscious ignorance is the prelude to any real advance in knowledge. And embrace uncertainty. Embrace ignorance. And the great obstacle to discovery is not ignorance. It's not ignorance. It is that you believe you know. And what you know is probably not true. If you look at really great persons, you know, they say they do not have special talents. Like Einstein says, he's just passionately curious. And you need to be curious, but in addition to being curious, you must have an open mind. And you can only have an open mind if you doubt. If you do not doubt, you will not have an open mind and you will not create. What can we do? You know, what are the key factors for success? I think extraordinary achievement in creativity and innovation is something that is possible in a very good environment. And we, as teachers or chairs or whatever we are, should provide these opportunities. The persons who should innovate, the first thing that you have to do is to get people interested in it. Now, get people interested in it, the only way you can do that is if you are interested in it. If you are not a fan of orthopedics, if you doubt that orthopedic surgery is the best medical discipline that there can be, then you should give up and certainly not teach. And the best interest must be the interest of the patient. When you have that and the ability to observe, you have to observe. And research is very simple. You see what everybody sees. Like we look at the lateral X-ray, and hundreds and thousands of surgeons look at the near view, and nobody sees how the acromion is positioned. For years, for decades. That means we are very, very capable of looking without seeing. And it is very interesting that there is no art that is more difficult to acquaint than observation. Very interesting study from Penn. Penn has taken a first-year resident group and sent half of this group to art classes, 1/2 day per week, and the other group did not. They had to observe paintings, interpret the faces of the persons on the paintings, they had to look at where people were standing and so forth. In year 3, they had these two groups examine patients. They had not learned anything about medicine in these art classes. Not anything. They just learned to observe. The group that had taken the art classes were X times better in making their diagnosis from observation and clinical findings. So learn to observe. Another thing that is very important is that invisible rules constrain our thinking. We are not aware that this happens, but it does. Like if you take shoulder surgeons, we have A or B or C glenoids. If these terms are used, we look at the glenoid. We don't look at the scapula, we don't look at something else, we just look at the glenoid. Although, at the end we find out that the problem is not the glenoid, it's elsewhere. So we started at the wrong place. The subacromial impingement is the same thing. Everybody believes it's subacromial impingement, and the question is, why is that? How is that? But we are not interested in whether things are so, but why things are so. So we are limited by our thinking, by what we have previously thought and what others have thought and done before us. So if you start with buttoning your shirt the wrong way, you will never end up well. Okay? If you start at the wrong spot, you will not get to a good result, and you may have to unbutton your shirt. You may have to start from scratch to get to a good result, and forget what you have learned. I have made my career by proving that what I had been taught was wrong. That's my career. Now, what about creativity and innovation? I think there is something that I would like to say where I am convinced that the industry goes the wrong way. New ideas usually arise in one brain. A team approach in trying to innovate is absolutely deadly. People in a group of 7, 9 people can only agree on what is already existent. If you come with a crazy idea, all the others in the group will destroy it. So, however, a team approach for perfectioning a new idea and validating a new idea is absolutely indispensable. What is the personality traits of an innovator? In my view, courage is rightly esteemed the first of all human qualities, and it generates all others. And it's audacious. If you worked under Dr. Neer, it was audacious to think something different than he did. Not to say something, to think something. And you have to have the courage to say, no, the snow tracks are deep, but I'm stepping out. And then you have to have courage, because you cannot win the lottery without buying a ticket. Then you need perseverance and conviction. If you are convinced that something that you have thought out is right, you should not give up, and you will not if it is important enough for you, because you are really convinced and want to get to an end. The other thing that is deadly are randomized controlled trials in the early phases. You must know that in the beginning, when you start, you have an idea, and you will not have evidence. And every ordinary orthopedic surgeon will raise his hand and say, where is the evidence? Where is it? Where is the evidence that a parachute is worth a damn? I don't know of a randomized controlled trial where people were jumping out of an airplane with or without a parachute. I think parachute works quite well. So remember Rolf Zinkernagel, absence of evidence in a certain period of time, especially in the process of innovation, is not evidence of absence. When you have your innovation, then true discipline requires that you are independent in your mind. You cannot follow your teachers or your mentors if you're convinced that you are right and they are not right. But that needs a lot of strength and a very, very strong sense for values. So in summary, the great obstacle to discovery is not ignorance, but the illusion of knowledge. Embrace uncertainty. Know that uncertainty and doubt is the basis, together with curiosity, for improvement. And if you are told that you should have a randomized controlled trial, remember another Nobel Prize winner, if your experiments need statistics, you should have done a better experiment. Thank you very much. I would hope that one or the other of you nominate somebody for the Meyer Award, which is an award for disruption and complete transformation of orthopedic surgery, given every 3 years. It's quite interesting because it has a prize sum of $100,000. Thank you very much.